All right, we are right at 7 o'clock, so I'll call tonight's city council meeting to order. And Jolene, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Erickson.
Here.
Councilmember Husnick.
Here.
Councilmember Valento.
Here.
Councilmember Roberts.
Here.
Mayor Bain.
Here, I'd like to invite everyone to rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Council, we have an agenda before you. I will entertain a motion to approve or any changes.
I'll motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? And our agenda is approved. First item this evening is our awards presentation, and Chief Peterson, I'll turn it over to you.
Mayor and city council members, good evening. Tonight we do have an awards presentation, and immediately following, I'd like to invite all of our guests upstairs to the community room for some light refreshments. And with that being said, I'd like to introduce Sergeant John Glatter.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members, family, friends, and coworkers. Thank you for being here this evening to show your support to Officer Tim Van Grisben as you recognize him for his outstanding life-saving police work. Officer Van Grisben started with the Forest Lake Police Department on October 18th, 2022, entered field training, and soon after was certified for solo patrol on December 23rd, 2022. Going into 2023, Officer Van Grisben was assigned as a patrol officer working the night shift. In 2023, Officer Van Grisben investigated over 30 driving while impaired traffic contacts. This outstanding work led to the Forest Lake Police Department recommending him to the Minnesota Department of Transportation, Office of Traffic Safety, for recognition as a 2023 DWI All-Star. So far this year, in 2024, Officer Van Grisben has investigated over 25 driving while impaired traffic contacts. These contacts do not include the number of investigations Officer Van Grisben has assisted his partners with. Seeing his work towards traffic safety, Officer Van Grisben was selected to attend the International Association of Chiefs of Police Drug Evaluation and Classification Program, where he was certified as a drug recognition expert in April of 2024. This training and certification supports Officer Van Grisben and his partners through drug-related driving while impaired investigations. It was not long after Officer Van Grisben began working in Forest Lake that it was apparent that he has a passion for traffic safety. His dedication to seeing motorists drive safely through our community, enforcing the laws and ordinances of our city, and educating current and new drivers has without a doubt led to safer roads in Forest Lake. Today, Bill Hammis, who is the Towards Zero Deaths law enforcement liaison for the Office of Traffic Safety, is here with us to help recognize Officer Van Grisben for his work. I'd like to invite Mr. Hammis up to say a few things. Thank you.
Well, good evening, Mayor, council members, city staff. Thank you for giving me a few minutes today. I want to start this out just by letting you know why this is so important. So far this year, 386 people have lost their lives on our roadways in Minnesota compared to 321 at this time last year. At the rate we're going, we will probably break 450 this year fatalities. You got to go back to 2007 to see that kind of a number. In the 8-county metro, which is where I work, we've lost 116 people, and 6 of those have been here in Washington County. Yeah, and you know, people say, well, it's only 6. Well, that seems like a small number until it's somebody you know, a relative, a family member, a friend, whoever. Then suddenly that number becomes very, very big, and that's why we do this. So at the Office of Traffic Safety, we have some recognition programs that we like to present to officers throughout the state of Minnesota. One of them is called the DWI All-Star Recognition. And what we do is agencies nominate officers to receive this recognition. And that's the word I like to use, is recognition, because I consider this recognition of life-saving police work. So agencies nominate officers, and the top, we'll call it performers in the state of Minnesota, are selected, and they are taken to a Twins game. And I will tell you that the tickets are paid by private donations. They get to go down onto the field. They're recognized out at the field. So 56 officers and 2 prosecutors were recognized at a Twins game this year. We don't want to leave anybody behind, though, on this, because this is too important. So 26 officers were selected here in the 8-county metro area, my area, and those 26 are responsible for removing 802 impaired drivers last year off from our roadways. Officer, and I'm going to look down, Van Grinsven, I know I'm going to mess that name up if I don't look at it real quick. Last year, he arrested 32 impaired drivers. And with that said, I just want you to look around this room and ask ourselves this: which one of us is here tonight because of the work that man has done last year? I have no doubt people are alive up in this area because of this unbelievable work that he has done. So with the honorable mention, that's what these 26 are. We have what we call the DWI All-Star Towel and Pin, and that's why I'm here tonight to present. So if you would come up here. On behalf of the Office of Traffic Safety, I wanted to come here and just say, first of all, thank you for the work you've done and present you with this towel. And I have the DWI All-Star Pin right here for you. I just want to say thank you. Keep it up. You're saving lives, and that's what this is all about. And thank you all for letting me be here, and thank you, Chief Peterson and Sergeant, for helping me set all of this up. So with that,
Congratulations once again, and thank you for all of the great work here in the city of Forest Lake. We much appreciate it. I say this every time, you are all welcome to stay. We have a very entertaining agenda. I also know that there is refreshments upstairs, and so if you want to take a few moments and go, by all means. Thanks for being here. All right, next on our agenda is open forum. Open forum is any interested party's opportunity to address council on any topic of their choice. Is there anyone signed up for open forum this evening? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to give our opinion on certain things. When I noticed it was going to be on the agenda, the Belts Park site design, I thought I would call my former commissioners that I served with to get their opinion, and I was correct, because I remember at the time we had come up with this idea of the parking lot and pretty much looked it over and decided it wasn't the time. We didn't know if it'd be forever, but for right now, it wasn't the time. They wanted to use the grant money for the playground and the ADA. And so we're all hoping that tonight you'll give that the green light. He's got me all concerned with the traffic. We'll have the green light that you'll go with option 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for open forum this evening? And anyone online, Jolene?
Just one attendee online, but not indicating any wish to speak.
Okay. With that, we'll close open forum, bring agenda back to council. Council, for your consideration this evening is our consent agenda. We have items 7A through 7O on consent. Open to any motions or any changes?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, 7A through 7O.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, and motion carries. Moving on to our regular agenda, our first item this evening is item 6A, consideration of the DeLong Sea and Ski Base in the Forest Lake, Lake One Letters of Agreement. And Jolene.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This evening, we're joined by Erica DeLong, who has requested that the city sign off on 2 letters of agreement related to the Sea and Ski Base private airport located at her home on Forest Lake. So the Airport Commission did review this request at their October 2nd meeting. They did recommend city council approval of the mayor sign off on these letters of agreement. A little bit of background, Ms. DeLong obtained her private airport license for this Sea Ski Base, and this license is already approved. It's not before council for consideration. She's requesting that the city approve the letters of agreement, which were provided in September. And these letters of agreement would allow for this sea and ski plane base to operate on the same radio frequency as the Forest Lake Airport. And it would also reduce traffic pattern conflicts and remove traffic pattern overlap. Traffic pattern overlap was a concern of the FAA, which resulted in them issuing an objectionable determination related to safe and efficient use of the airspace. The objectionable status was not a disapproval of this private airbase. It's just a recommendation for some remediation to reduce any traffic pattern issues. Again, this request was reviewed by the Airport Commission in October. They did recommend approval to the city council for the signing off of these letters. And Silas Parmar of Bolton and Meg has also reviewed the same and has no concerns with the city moving forward with signing off on these letters. Ms. DeLong is here this evening and is happy to answer any questions because she can speak to this much better than I can.
Understood. Thank you. Council, any questions before we ask Ms. DeLong if she has any comments for council to consider this evening? Not seeing any questions from council. Is there anything you want to present specifically to us? Certainly want to give you the opportunity if you'd like to.
Mayor, thank you, and City Council, thank you.
Good evening.
Very excited to put the seaplane base back on the map. It was on the map for the last 60 years with aviation. It gave a specific spot so we could communicate with our seaplanes, also with the Forest Lake Airport. It also gave us not only the location, but it also gave us the elevation of the lake and also gave a point of contact. So we're excited. I'm excited to be able to carry on the tradition there. I am a resident. I live at 7353 North Shore Trail North. And so I ask for the approval. Normally this would be done amongst airport manager to airport manager. I'm the airport manager at my airport, but we don't have one currently. So that's why it was escalated up to you, Mayor Bain, for your signature. And I would thank you for that in advance.
Thank you. While Ms. DeLong is still up, any council, any questions? All right. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you.
If there aren't any questions, I think we're ready for a motion if anyone's ready for that.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the request as stated, making sure that we are using the local frequency at Forest Lake Airport.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Husnick and a second from Councilmember Erickson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you for being here tonight. All right, our next item on our agenda is item 6B, which is consideration of the Network Now comment letter. And Abby.
Thank you, Mayor Bain, members of the council. As the council is aware, we recently provided some comment to the Metropolitan Council regarding their long-range Imagine 2050 plan. They've released a new, the division of Met Council Met Transit has released a new concept plan known as Network Now, which is kind of a more shorter term plan. The idea would be let's build our transportation system for the needs that we have now as opposed to that long-range 2050 plan. Included in your packet tonight is a comment letter that I prepared on behalf of the council to submit to Metro Transit, the Metropolitan Council member, and our sector representative. So noted right away is Met Transit routes 275B and 288 have been suspended since the pandemic, and Met Transit is proposing to eliminate those altogether. So those are the two routes that run through the Forest Lake Service Center, one of them that goes then into Columbus, both of them going down into the cities. Included in the draft letter indicates that we are not in support of this. Clearly, we'd like to retain our mass transportation options and options for our residents, even if they had been discontinued for some time. I note in the letter that even though we are an outlier, maybe a little bit considered maybe more rural community in the metro region, we do have 50,000 people within the Forest Lake School District. We're serving a regional influence, and people are coming here to transit down into the city. The Met Council requires us to develop at an urban density, and as such, we should be providing those urban amenities. We have already been developing with higher densities around the transit center, and now we're just requiring all of our existing and our future residents to be very car dependent. I note that significant public investment has occurred, not only in mass transportation, but also public housing subsidies in the area of the transportation center. And then even though we have the option of TransitLink, that's a door-to-door direct dial, it's one of those services that most of our residents eligible to use do have to schedule in advance. It's typically that they're unable to accommodate same-day services. And then if they want to go to some of our neighboring communities outside of the metropolitan region, they're at a loss. Just for an example, going to the hospital in Wyoming. I do also put into the letter at the request of the Planning Commission, who reviewed this last week, that the Met Council and Met Transit, if they are going to be removing the mass transit opportunities in Forest Lake, they should be considering not requiring us to pay into the transit taxing district, as well as eliminating or reducing the urban density requirements. Simply put, we're asked to being put into a system that our residents aren't directly benefiting from. So my recommendation for you is to discuss the draft letter, see if there needs to be any edits to it, and then essentially just providing me direction to submit that to the Met Council for their Network Now concept plan.
Thank you, Abby. Council, any feedback that we have for Abby as part of the feedback letter? In reviewing the letter, I think you've certainly struck the right tone, and I think the recommendation of the Planning Commission to include if the service isn't going to be provided, we shouldn't be paying into the system that provides the service. I also just reflect on my own personal use of what had been previously provided into both of the downtowns. There have been times where I personally have used those, and like many times those lines were at capacity. And so it's not just a what's needed, but also historically we've demonstrated great utilization and overcapacity utilization. And so what's frustrating is they have those numbers already, and so certainly they know that and have chosen to not take that into consideration. But us to point that out, that we have established a history of just high ridership, it would have been my only add.
Would you like me to amend the memo to include the letter to include that?
I don't. I'm open to council's
I
feedback.
think that would, I mean, you're the one signing this and you've actually wrote that, so I think that's good feedback.
I mean, there were days where I would choose to drive because the wait for the next bus was too long, and it was likely I wasn't even going to hit the next bus, and so I'm just going to drive in today. Again, this is dated, but our population has only grown, and I would envision if those lines were to be restarted, we would have a similar level of enthusiasm for it. So something of just specifically pointing to historic ridership levels, that they were high, and
I certainly can incorporate that, and then any other changes that the commission or the council might like to see, and then I think I just vet it through you, Mayor Bain, that you're comfortable with the final draft.
A question, and maybe if I missed, this was in the packet and I missed it, I apologize, but the idea, is this lack of funding, or is it, or ridership? Are they saying the contrary, that the ridership just won't come back after the pandemic?
The pandemic definitely changed patterns. They haven't done any testing in the Forest Lake market, but essentially what they're saying is that they want to concentrate their resources where there's the most amount of users. And so I think that they're really concentrating them in high population centers. We would have access to facilities, our residents and the region's residents would have access to facilities in the Lino Lakes Service Center and then in Blaine. However, it's really the only area that I can see in the metro area when I'm looking at the Network Canal plan that we're just completely cut out of anything to the community. There's other communities that may have also had routes eliminated, but they have a much shorter distance to a transit center or a route, 10 minutes or less. It's really about them placing their resources where they have the highest amount, I think, of people. It's the only thing I can think of. Really wasn't great explanation for him.
Thank you.
I would move that council approve the feedback letter with slight modifications as we've discussed tonight. Be my motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. Abby, we can just work together on what that language looks like. All right, next item this evening, item 8C, the Fire Relief Association benefit level increase, and Chief Newman.
Mayor, members of the council, up for consideration is a benefit level increase for the fire department retirement account from a benefit level of $6,100, which it is currently to $6,300. The Relief Association is a nonprofit organization separate from the city of Forest Lake. That's primary purpose is to provide retirement benefits for firefighters once they've either reached the age of retirement and at least 10 years of service for a partial pension, up to 20 years of service for a full pension. The main funding source for the Relief Association comes from a 2% tax on fire insurance that's paid throughout any insured property in the state. The Relief Association is managed by members of the Forest Lake Fire Department through a board of directors. The Forest Lake mayor is on that board of directors, the fire chief, the city administrator. We meet up to 12 times a year and basically discuss and invest money for the retirement association. Every year we're audited by a third-party auditor, which is Abdo Ecken Myers for the city of Forest, does auditing for the city of Forest Lake as well. And to give you a history where this benefit level increase that we've come up every year and approached council on is back in September 19th, the Relief Association approached the Joint Fire Board looking for a mechanism where we could do automatic small increases in the retirement fund if we're able to show that we're able to be funded over a certain percentage, which is 150% funding level, and that we would bring our audited results to the Joint Fire Board each year, and if we did reach that amount, then they would vote to increase that funding. In September of 2024, we went to the Joint Fire Board this year and brought the audited reports, which reflected 276% funded, which is well above the 150% funding ratio. And the Joint Fire Board unanimously approved to increase the retirement funding by $250, which would bring that retirement annual benefit level to $6,350. And a requirement of the state is it needs to go in front of the council for ratification, and that's what I'm here today for is to see if the council will approve that new benefit level of $6,350.
Thank you, Chief. Just one other point of context I wowould add just onto Chief's report is when the Joint Fire Board reviewed the funding levels, there were a number of different actuarial numbers that were presented that provided kind of three different perspectives of the funding level. And we were well above all of those. So it wasn't just we have one report that happens to show a significantly overfunded status, but there were three that are all showing various degrees of conservatism, but all showing a very healthy fund balance, which was really part of the discussion of if the goal is to increase retention of paid-on-call firefighters, let's put this money to work and let's increase the benefit minimally this year and maybe consider a suggested change in the future. When we started this staged approach, we thought, let's start with $200 and see how it goes. I think there's some good evidence that that should be increased. We didn't want to make all of that commitment in 1 year, so hence the modest increase to $250 and a commitment back to the Fire Board to continue that conversation in 2025. So. With that, I would move that council approve the fire benefit relief level increase as presented by Chief.
I'll second.
And any discussion? I jumped right into making a motion, but.
No, this has been well funded, and the numbers are there, and when I served on the Joint Fire Board too, it's been well managed, and it certainly has my support, so.
Any other points of comment, questions? All right, we have a motion on the table and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, and motion carries. Thank you, Chief. Next item this evening, we have two items related to Belts Park. First is related to the site approval, and.
Madam Mayor, I think you went past.
Oh, I did.
Then wait.
Let's back to 8D, thank you. The FLA fee waiver request. Also Dave's.
Mayor and Council, as you know, we enter in a priority use agreement with FLA every year. Last year's agreement had them paying the city $30,000 for that priority use. As you also know, we did a field rehab out there this fall, which ended up closing the field, so fall ball could not happen and football moved to the high school. With that happening, FLA has sent a letter which is attached to the memo requesting relief in the amount of $15,000 for their portion of the fall sports. Cal looked into the agreement and looked to what they're charging their users. He came up to a total of $12,090 that softball and football paid into this agreement to use these fields. So yeah, it's a shortfall for us, just being that we plan that $30,000. It goes into the scheduling system that we have a contract with the district. We also use that to we roughly have spent that already this year. So the city would be short that whatever we return back to them, and also so really here tonight to get the council's weigh in on what you would like to do, and we could bring that back to memorialize.
Thank you, Dave. Council feedback for Dave, and are you looking for a recommendation tonight, or are you looking for an action?
Tonight we're looking for a recommendation, then we'd bring that back in the form of a.
Council feedback for Dave.
So, Dave, if you could reiterate, we have spent those funds, I mean, the funds of what the dollar amount that they're requesting that be sent back as those dollars have been spent?
Yep, we spent approximately, I believe, $12,000 for field scheduling, and the fertilization was just right approximately, balance usually either goes into programming or just maintenance to offset all of it.
This project out there has been in the works for quite some time. What's the communication been like between all, active parties?
Yep, so council had approved the project in May or June. The contractor, we're gonna wait to do it about September. Kyle, who did work at the school district, put everyone in. Trying to coordinate with them to use school fields. That's how it all got to the high school and softball. I had found some other places. I think one league just didn't have fall ball in this area and Travis. Abby, just to clarify, Abby, just let me know, so they haven't paid the $15,000. They paid the first $15,000. They have not paid. So they're asking to not pay at all or whatever the council decides what
How long-standing has this agreement been?
I don't know what, it's been 2 or 3 years. And so they didn't sign the agreement till March. Everything's been late. Happened till, hoping to have it approved by the end of the year.
And we budgeted for this last year, going for a year that this was gonna happen, and that the fields are gonna be unusable. I guess I don't feel quite right accepting money from a nonprofit that wasn't able to use the fields, which we've all known is gonna be the case for a year. That's, I guess, my.
Yeah. My only hesitancy is on the timing of the request. Like in a perfect world, this would have been thought about, by both parties upstream, and we wouldn't have budgeted for it, knowing that the fields were going to be unusable. But that didn't happen. And so, because is this the first time that we've had the letters dated second? Is this the first inclination we've had that this request was coming?
They had just given us the notice. We maybe knew a few weeks before we got the letter. To Councilmember Erickson's point, we did sign the agreement after the budget was adopted. I don't know necessarily if the communication was the most, we were maybe behind on communication there. We certainly knew the project was happening. But this is just another example of why it was such a great move to move parks into one division or one department, right? We didn't necessarily have that cross communication going on. I will also just note that we've had the use agreement with FLOSS since 2021. We did do the analysis of the $30,000, about $12,000 is dedicated to those fall sports. So there would be probably a few $1,000s that still would have maybe be applied to those spring sports that were able to use the fields.
What do we do with the, if we approve this, where does that money come from? How do we fill that gap?
Right now, the 30,000 is split between Public Works and Parks Programming. So the shortfall would just have to make up somewhere in one of those two departments. I almost said that we didn't have a park and rec coordinator for 3 months, so there's
My next question.
6 months. Felt like longer. So, I mean,
Yeah.
have that available, fund balance. So money that was dedicated for has been spent, but there's
feels to me like it's the right thing to do. Of the fields weren't available, let's not charge the typical fee and let's waive the typical fee. Even if it is a bit of a last minute request, sounds like there are some options in fund balance, given some staffing vacancies to fund it.
12 that's tied to the fall sports.
That's kind of
12, their number is 12, our estimation of their number.
12 is the number that Kyle got from FLA for what FLA would charge these user groups for the use of fall sports.
But they're asking for 15.
They're just asking, so the payments come for spring and then fall, they just split it in half, so they're asking just to waive the fall payment. And Kyle has just done the math to say this is technically what the fall sports paid for, it's not.
I could go either way.
Yeah, the fact that they had some issue with not being able to use part of it, I mean, that makes a difference too. So if there's some kind of a compromise, I'd sure think about that. Maybe not the full 15,000, maybe, I don't know.
Last thing I want to do though is get into a
No. This is a many, many, many year relationship that has gone very well and do a lot of great work. So I can see an argument for 12. I'm going to be hard pushed to make that motion. If I'm making the motion, it would be 15. But I would move that, I move that council approve the payment relief of $15,000 as requested by FLA. Is there a second?
second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? And motion carries. Okay. Moving on to 8. Now moving on to 8E, our Belts Park items. And let's start first with our site approval for the site improvements. Dave, you want to start us on this?
Yep, we were here on October 14th, brought up 4 different options for site plan. City council kind of threw out the do nothing and threw out the doing last year's option, the one venue park on the bottom and additional. We kind of focused in on options 1 and options 2. Want me to put them up on the screen so everybody can see them, or do you have them there?
Pull them up, that'd be helpful.
This would be option 1 that takes advantage of the existing pedestrian facilities. When we did the court rehab, we made the courts bigger on the north and side to accommodate ADA compliant sidewalks. This would extend that trail to 11th Avenue Southeast, tie in the pavilion, and then provide a 10-foot trail down to South Shore Drive, redo the sidewalk along South Shore Drive to make it ADA compliant, add a trail or pedestrian facility feature to the, all amenities at the park have to be ADA. Option 2 is technically the same with everything I said except for adding a parking lot. At that last meeting, I said I was going to try to get better costs for the playground itself. It seemed that city council is all in favor of getting that exact quote for a playground, and both of them provided estimated prices for option 1 and option 2. On the screen is with option 1, adding the playground plus the site work minusing off the $300,000 grant would give the city cost in that final row. So option one, the city would expense $444,000 approximately to do the playground and the pet facilities. Option two, this city would pay $579,000, roughly 100 and just to point out too, I know the last one, last meeting we got in the weeds a little bit about the parking agreement. Either one of these options require a shared parking agreement. Both of them meet their ADA compliance, would meet the grant requirements to get that $300,000. They're partially intertwined, but they're separate of each other. So the city could, overall, they could pick option two with a parking lot and still have a shared parking lot agreement, or pick option one and decide not to have a shared parking lot together, but they're, for grant purposes and for the site work, that's not required to do, either have an agreement or not have an agreement. And brought up with the Parks Commission as we've gone through this, a need for parking. Facilities that we lay out on option one and two will both meet the grant requirement.
Thank you,
The
Dave.
rest of the stuff we've kind of gone through a bunch of times, so I'm here to answer questions. Staff still would recommend option two, just for the summer and winter sports with the parking lot and centralized location, having to only do stormwater BMP once. Centralized location for these future facilities. But we're looking for direction from council tonight to either go with option one and option two and bring this to the DNR to get approval, which other option we have, then we come back, seek approval for plans and specs, put them together, work with watershed requirements, and hopefully come back, hopefully January, February with authorizing.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep.
Council, I made a motion in our last meeting to move ahead with option two, and then we ultimately decided to table that. Just some additional visibility of information that Councilmember Erickson and I were able to obtain when we sat down with staff as part of our, kind of in our role as the administration committee and talking with staff. What became apparent was that we meet the requirements for the grant, and we meet the requirements for parking without a parking lot. We don't need the parking lot to do that. As Dave pointed out, we also don't need the parking lot agreement with the church to do that either. And so there really is a fair number of options for parking. And personally, I just think about where we are with this plan and needing to make some concrete decisions on Belts Park. I have appreciated the reminder that the cost of the playground equipment that is on our agenda tonight has only continued to increase, and also we are due for another price increase, and so waiting is becoming very expensive. And if you look at the diagram on the screen, the amount of real estate that is to parking is a fair amount, and might be a good idea, may not be a good idea. We have potentially new staff coming, or new council coming on board here with, after the election, will be seated in 2025. New city administrator, Parks Commission that will be seated. There are a lot of new people that will be at the table that may have all sorts of opinions on how we support parking long-term. That there is some benefit in getting some of that feedback and a more consensus of what the rest of the park layout is going to look like. It's kind of got me pivoted back to option one of let's do the playground equipment. I do think in the short term, we should we should pursue a short-term agreement with the church. We don't need to approve that tonight, but I do think it is something we should consider. But parking lot or no parking lot, there are some broader park considerations that are impacted by that decision. It's a lot of real estate. If we make that commitment tonight that real estate doesn't come back, we don't have to, and yet we can still move ahead with a great, playground and some of the improvements that we've wanted, still taking advantage of the grant. To me, option one is certainly the bright light, we should do this option. If we felt like we had consensus that parking, I think now is the time to make that decision. I just feel like we're not ready to make that decision. And again, with new entrants coming on here early 2025, we could still decide that, but we don't need to decide that this evening.
One thing
It's a
about-
pretty foundational part to the park.
One thing about option one, I mean, as far as the real difference between the two is just the parking area.
It is.
It just seems to me that if something didn't work out with option one, that could always be in the background someplace, and so I would agree that we could try option one and go from there.
Yeah, and I think also the clarification that the parking lot isn't required for the grant. I think preservation of using those grant dollars was important, and so having that clarity that that wasn't needed helped me to kind of evolve back to, we can have a great option here in the short term and do some great work on option one. That would be my preference.
I agree, and what scares me about, I think that clarification is great, because I think the last time we met on it and I wasn't here, how I read the packet was it meant to be that the parking lot was needed in order for us to get the grant. And so I'm happy to hear that that's not the case, because looking at where the parking lot goes in this green space, it takes up a lot of green space for the park. And so I think, as you and Councilmember Husnick both mentioned, we can always add it on in the future, but I think this is just the safe bet of, we get the grant, it still moves us forward, and we are finally doing something with Belts Park.
I would agree. I've been supportive of one from last meeting. Nothing's changed there. It gives us more options. To all your points, Mayor, about bringing in, having new people at the table here in a couple months, and let's get it built out right and get everyone's opinion, and not corner ourselves or make a decision where we have to now all of a sudden design this park based on this parking lot.
I appreciate that, I appreciate staff's kind of made it clear what we need to decide on, what we don't need to decide on. Although it's not a requirement that we enter into a parking agreement, I think we should at least explore to see if we are able to come to terms on a parking agreement. And so I'd like whatever motion that we make tonight to also be to instruct staff to continue those conversations to see if, again, we can reach those terms. I'd like us to bring that, at least have some options of deciding if that's worth bringing back, other than one of the options is not pursuing anything. And I think I don't know if we're at that spot here, at least in the near term. I think we should explore what that looks like, because clearly we have a shared parking lot, and our users of the park are using that parking lot. And so what does that look like? And are we within, if we're able to come to an agreement, I'd like to see us do that. Any other points of comment or clarification, questions for Dave? Well, I've talked about the motion I would make, so why don't I just do that? I would motion that council approve option one as presented in our packet, and instruct staff to pursue a parking lot agreement with the church, bring that back to council if that is a viable alternative.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? And motion carries. All right, quick follow-up to this item is approval of the playground equipment. Dave, do you want to walk us through what's in our packet?
Yep, this is portion 2 to the grant project, is adding this playground and surfacing. In the memo, this playground was approved back in 2022. The same playground was approved in the new container that they were going to build on the south side. So F doesn't have any thought that the DNR is not going to approve this, it's already been approved once. The only change is that it moves to the existing. The packet, folks at home to see this as well. This is that container that's existing up right now with plywood railing and other pieces falling apart. It would, the wood or the rubber mulch would all get removed by Public Works and repurposed at Fenway Park, Cedar Park, Clear Lake to top all these containers off. So we'll take advantage of all this extra rubber mulch in that ground. And the surfacing will be poured in place on top. Like I said, this was all approved. This layout was approved by the Parks Commission. Vendor this layout with all the same components. The only thing that was taken out last year to try to buy the price down was the shade structures, and we added them back in. It's important. People ask for that all the time of where's shade in my park, or the kids are playing out in the sun, so added them back in on some of those features, as you can see. 5 and then over that'd be the only change that was initially approved. We removed it to try to. We also went out and this is a little tyke structure. We also went to Game Time and gave them the requirements for the grant. They came back with a price of about $585,000. So this is what originally was preferred there, and does show that it's prices do go up November 1st. As the mayor had said, so if approved tonight, we would sign that quote and get it over to North End in order to save another markup. Figure 13 weeks to build it and to ship it if it gets here before spring. They have to figure out if we want to do the second. And wrapped up by next fall. Any questions you have for me? Otherwise, just looking for.
Thank you, Dave. Council, any questions for Dave?
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the playground equipment and servicing for Belts Park from Northland Recreation for $533,753.
Second.
There is a motion from Councilmember Erickson, a second from Councilmember Husnick. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? And our motion is carried. That ends our regular agenda. We are going to move into a discussion topic this evening. Just a reminder, the discussion topics are more of a working session of council, informal in nature. Anything we talk about that will require official action will come back before council at a future meeting. And then we will move from there into staff updates, and then we do have a closed session scheduled for later at the end of our agenda as well. With that, let's move into our discussion topic. And Kevin and Dave, I think you're tag team in this.
Yes, Mayor and City Council. So it's a brief introduction at the workshop last week, discussing the median landscaping and roundabout refresh project. There's a question brought up about possibly bonding for this project. So included in your packet is just a couple bonding scenarios of what that would look like. The first scenario is a $1 million bond being paid back over 20 years at 3.5%. You'd be paying interest of just over $400,000 estimated in that case. And then also if it would be paid back over 10 years instead, it would cut that interest down to about $227 estimated. So This was the information requested from council, so Dave and myself are here to answer any questions that you have regarding this funding or the project itself.
Kevin, Council, we had a lot of discussion on this topic at our workshop. Interested in hearing how thoughts have evolved on the project, timing of the project, funding of the project. Wake up the next morning with any ahas?
So to answer your question, yes. Sleepless that night after discussing this, it was my idea to potentially bring this to a bonding situation, and it was probably more getting caught up in the excitement of what could be done and get the project done and do what we want to do by rehabbing those medians. I think, though, we need to hit a pause button here. This dollar amount has gone up, doubled what was projected or what staff had put there as a placeholder for the 10-year budget. And so what started really from just myself and Councilmember Erickson specifically asking for some more maintenance and rehab and weeding of these medians in certain public areas escalated quickly to doing looking at this, doing a study, and then next thing you know, we're at $1.4 million. And so I personally think we need to put this on pause. I think we need to put some of that money that was budgeted to, if it requires hiring additional seasonal help in Public Works. Going through those, we did do the study, which is great to have. We can maybe just pick and choose as time goes on, but this is just with all the other issues going on in the city, as much as I'm all about aesthetics and wanting this to the city look better, we need to still move forward and kind of take it in little bites. But this dollar amount just is way more than I had anticipated when we agreed to do the study.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, I think, that having had that study done and seeing an outsider's view of what could or should be, I think is very valuable. I think during the workshop, we talked about a number of different ideas about engaging the state and the county and sequencing some of those aspects to get their timing and their possible, partnership on some of that stuff. So I think that still definitely needs to be pursued. I think there's some relatively easier things about that, like concreting some of those fingers that would just clean up certain areas. So I would like to see us take a more phased approach, still pursue this, but probably not at the clip that we were all talking about last week, or at that level of expense.
Dave, I know it hasn't been a very long time, but did you talk to Tony folks at all, or?
Yeah, so the estimate that was brought up by staff when we did that estimate, it didn't tie in the north and south roundabouts, so that wasn't included in that original estimate, and it didn't take into account that parking lot and adding that planter. So they're working with contractors, the 2 irrigation sites that I think will also bring that down. So I still think that we're pretty close to that original estimate, minus those 2 roundabouts. Those are just kind of added on of, hey, since we're doing this study, let's add these on.
The 2 roundabouts, meaning the 97 roundabouts?
97
Yeah.
and 61, so they weren't part of that first estimated 775, and then, like you said, that we added the parking lot and that other container, for public parking too, so that wasn't a. As far as timing goes and staging out, I still think that's possible. I think like the 7th Street, we'd want to try to grab that when the county's doing their rehab, just because I don't think we're going to want to go in there and pop curb after the fact they come through. The concrete and the medians can come at a different point in time where we can set up traffic control and dig them out and concrete them in. If we keep that funding for the next few years, I think after our next workshop, if we have a more accurate number and trying to see those blocks, I think we could still take advantage of these chunks and adding trees and fixing irrigation and stuff like that for that dedicated amount, I wouldn't want to just walk away from it. I think we could probably still do upgrades, and I don't think point, there might be some projects and help buy down some of these costs. Really, that study is, we're hoping to get a, yes, we like this plan, let's go with this plan, and then after that, we can try to bite those chunks off. But I don't want to see us walking away from that. At least, I mean, I can see the increase. Have a plan and we have some funding dedicated for it. I like to see, as a group, figure out which ones we can kind of buck off and then what kind of staging.
How much, Dave, so on one hand, I think one of the reasons we ended up in the conversation we ended up in our last meeting was because I think everyone liked the plan. I think we were like, well, yes, let's do it. And also, while the county is in doing Broadway, let's maybe take a big chunk, and hence the question came up of, would we just, while we're doing it, let's just do it all? Which now we've seen that number and have had some time to reflect, and that's too much. But if we say we like that plan, is there a financially feasible option that makes that plan still attainable? I wouldn't want us to kind of give a nod to a plan if it's just, the plan to drive a Maserati, and we're just never going to do that. But if there's a way that we can take that plan and over long-term phase it in, then I'm more comfortable with us saying that it's the right one.
Yeah, and I think dialing those numbers in, we're going to get a better idea of what that irrigation repair. I looked at it in the workshop. I thought, wow, that's way too high considering what kind of my estimate out of there. I mean, it could be a project that 12th and Broadway comes in at under 6 figures to redo all the entire irrigation and plant some trees, right? And then that could be it. Then we have 19th Street is not only, but it was planting 5 trees and sodding the break them off and kind of back down to those smaller chunks and try to chip away at them, and then also take advantage of if the state roundabout where we could grab all of those fingers. Maybe they'll stay mulch for 5 years until they come through there, but then you can grab it. At least the plan where it's guiding you, where you can into the parking lot if we're in the neighborhood of a road project where we could add that to the project. Don't have a plan, then it's hard to try to interject when we can to try to find ways to pay for it. So that was really the main goal of these workshops, is that, and to your point, I think you guys all liked it. It's just final step of saying, yeah, this is what we like. Now let's figure out how to do it as economic as possible. And
Other points of feedback? So we have there is a component to 2025 that is for this project, right? Is it 100 and?
We have a tax levy of 145,000 in the 2025 budget currently, and that's over 5 years.
Right. So it seems that, council, I'm just trying to condense our feedback here, is overall still favorable to the plan. We would prefer a phased approach that more closely follows what's currently built into the 10-year plan from an annual spending. Does that feedback give you enough for where we sit today?
So we have that upcoming workshop in November, and that'll, hopefully we'll have refined costs all for the irrigation, and talk with the county and MnDOT to see if any of that, come out of it and to help some cost savings. So then hopefully in that chart that he has, it kind of breaks down each stage, it'll be a little more accurate, and then hopefully that approval of the plan, and then figure out what we want to implement first. 45,000, what would we like to do? Which I would recommend that 7th Street to probably that one, and then whatever else we want.
Just to confirm, that what we'll see next will come a little bit more detailed than just hand-sketched drawings on there, or do you think?
That would be, I directed him to come to that workshop to come up with a quote to turn these sketches into an actual artist rendering slash landscaping plans. That's what you would bid your work on. Basically, and right now is concepts like he's doing. Next step would be hopefully on the 25th to, approve the actual plan, and then maybe part of that 145,000 is to have him sign plans and specs and artist rendering.
Anything else, council, anything else on this topic? Staff, anything else you need of council?
Yeah, if there's anything else you want us to look into between now and that workshop in November, just let me know, or let Joe have to do some figuring, or how you want stuff broke out. Just have everything you want to look for that workshop.
Great, very good. Let's move on to staff updates, and we'll start with Jolene.
Just sure y'all aware, we're in the home stretch for 2024 election season here. So early voting remains open at the Service Center down the road. They'll be open on Saturday and Sunday as well to process ballots for early voters. So
Do you know
the
the
lines
hours
were
on the weekend?
long today. What?
Do you know the hours on the weekend?
I believe 9 to 3. I'll verify and send that out the weekly update.
And Saturday and Sunday?
Correct. No other updates though.
The only update I have is we have released the Hometown Holiday Save the Date, the sponsorship opportunities and volunteer opportunities. You'll all get an email yet this evening. It's drafted. I just got to hit send, as well as Planning Commission EDA to share that out with your networks. That we're looking for people and volunteers and money to help run the event. So thank you.
Thanks, Abby. Dave?
Just one update. Seems like the leaves all decided to fall just last week, all at once.
Same day.
So we have two sweepers out trying to knock down the streets, and the compost is, well, we had to come and push up on Saturday night. They couldn't get their cars around the circle through there. They had leaves picked up all the way to the hut we had out there. So hauling leaves, transferring them out, and street sweeping is.
Just one update. On Friday at 7 a.m., Forest Lake Fire was requested out for a structure fire on North Shore Drive. When fire crews arrived, we had a fairly well-involved structure. Ended up having received mutual aid from 7 fire departments. Forest Lake Police, M-Health assisted with it. No injuries, rescued 2 cats. Unfortunately, the house is a total loss. And fire is currently under investigation. Fire crews cleared around 10 p.m. that night.
10 p.m. It's a long day. Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Amanda?
Yeah, Council, just a reminder that this Friday is interview day for the city administrator position. So lunch will be at noon, and then the interviews following that, and then council deliberations. I believe shortly before this meeting, Carl sent out the sort of final packet on each of the 2 finalists. So just a reminder, a lot of that information is still confidential for your eyes only. The department head panel and the stakeholder panel won't be getting all of the same information that you have. They will have the resume, but they won't have that thorough background check analysis. This week, I will be sending you, or Jolene, one of us will be sending you the questions. Not that you have to follow them, but just sort of some recommended questions to think about for your interview. Likewise, we'll be providing questions for the stakeholder and the department head meetings. The plan is that I will be with the stakeholders. Jolene will obviously be with the department heads. And similar to last time, we'll run it where there'll be a representative from both panels who can provide you with some feedback at your 4:30 deliberation. Questions about that day?
Reminder for those watching that that meeting is open to the public. Public is welcome. Ryan?
Mayor, City Council, just a couple updates. Well, we got through the bulk of the work on Everton Avenue or County State Aid Highway 33. That's a realignment of Menard's driveway is nice if you haven't had a chance to drive that yet. Extra queuing distance between Broadway and their entry into their main store is definitely a nice safety improvement there, and hopefully that works very well moving forward. Also, we had a meeting with Washington County last week. They received some federal funding in regards to go to the intersection of Trunk Highway 61 and County Road 50. So they'll be sending out an RFP for professional services here shortly. And then they'll be working through a design process. The project does need to follow the federal process and with the airport and MnDOT, so they're allowing some ample time there into the construction season, which they're planning a 2028 construction project. Without looking at anything or doing an ICE study, they'll do a intersection control study as well, but most definitely looking at some sort of a intersection control change and improvement, which would either be obviously a roundabout or a signal. So that's kind of in the works. You'll hear more about that as that proceeds, but just want to give you guys an update. There is some things going on there because I believe we actually just had another recent accident in that location too. So hope's coming. That's all I got.
As that project opens up for public comment and public is able to weigh in, I know that there's a lot of feedback when the project is ready for it on particular intersection control.
Washington County knows that they should be thinking ahead about public engagement meetings up here. So.
They do a good job, so that's good. Did you say 2028 is the anticipated?
28 construction.
28, okay. Very good. Council up, I almost forgot you, Kevin. My apologies. Go ahead.
Just one update for council. It's a reminder that the budget online survey is open through October 31st. So if you see any residents or anyone listening, I encourage them to fill that out so then we can have that at the council for our meeting on November 12th after our in-person budget open house.
Council updates. Councilmember Erickson.
No updates tonight.
Councilmember Husnick.
I attended a school board meeting that lasted about 45 seconds last time. I just happened to be there because there was a football game for my grandson, so this was their second meeting, and they just go pay the bills and take care of the consent agenda, and that was it. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Valento.
No updates tonight.
Councilmember Roberts, I'm sorry.
No updates. I do just have a couple of questions for Dave. We each all received emails regarding some concern on screening at the new portable bathrooms locations at Castlewood. Any thoughts on that and be able to work with the resident there? And then the other question is, we've had a chance to meet with the contractor out at the pickleball courts yet?
As far as the pickleball courts, the contractor hasn't been back in town because they got the wrong screens or the wrong fence. It's supposed to be 10-foot fence and 8-foot fence showed up, so he went to other projects. So I did talk to him last Monday or Tuesday, and the next time he's in town, we will go over there and take a look at that. So either whatever needs to be done should not get done until next year anyway. So I mean, we'll still get an idea of what to look like, but there's definitely not a rush on trying to fix something in this temperature. As far as screening, I mean, depends what we want to do. If we want to screen all of our enclosures, I mean, those closures were out there for 25 years. They didn't have screening on it. We're just following our code, and that residence about 500 feet away from that enclosure. So I guess I would be looking back for direction of when we want to try to make four-sided screens or which direction. We just follow the code and don't face it towards the street or adjacent property owners. If we want to add more, it just adds cost, and then it's at a standard where every enclosure we have, we do that, or is it on complaint based, or I guess I just don't know. I need direction on what to do there.
How many are there? I mean, what is if we were to say, yes, we want to move from and I don't expect you to have this number off the top of your head, but it'd be helpful to know, like, is this a decision for 5 structures? Is this a decision for 50 structures?
Say it's between,
And currently, we are enclosing on
sides.
3
so
sides.
Where the door is and just for maintenance. Get them in and out during the winter time. The only one that stays year round is Beltspark.
And then the challenge in this particular property is that the person that has reached out is on the side of the 4th side?
It would be facing, yeah, so there's a house to the north, there's a house to the south, the street is to the east, so we face on the fairway to the west, and the houses are off to the side, so indirectly it's. And the reason why well, number one, they're 25 years old, so they're falling apart, but number two, we move locations for both of them to get them close to a golf cart path, because last year we couldn't maintain them for about 2 months because they were in such a spot where the service truck couldn't get to them. So some of it's screened and some of it's just, it's in a new spot, right? It's not where it was for the last 20 years, and now it's noticeable, it's just in a different spot. At Castlewood, there's 2, correct, yep.
I mean,
So in our park system, we have them everywhere that are facing indirectly at people's houses, so that's why I said I need direction of, do we set our new standard that we do 4-sided, or do we wait and someone complains, then we decide if we want to make it?
Mayor,
no, I drove out there, oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
I drove out there yesterday morning, and I mean, the one structure that's closest to the road, you can see it's falling apart, and that's facing east. Houses that are across the street. New one is just a little bit further, still facing the same way. The bathroom door is faced houses across the street, 25 years. The other one, it's on the same green, it's just pointing in a different direction, the new structure, correct?
A little to the northeast, and then it used to face, the opening faced north, and now it faces west.
There's houses there that it faced as well. I mean, I actually like the idea of maybe workshopping, get clarity of how many of these structures we have, because I think of the one nearest Bayview Park, that's facing a home. And, you know, maybe there's something to be said for planting a couple of
Better screening?
better screening, if they're in proximity to, you know. So I'd like to see us workshop this and just figure it out, because I don't think it should be complaint-based, but I
don't
also
think it
think
should
that
be
we
complaint.
probably could pathway to better appearance.
Mayor?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add, I was going to suggest that we bring this back to council for a more robust discussion so that council can actually provide direction to staff on these kind of items. We also would like to bring back, just to get formal council approval to move forward with some more in-depth clearing of the property at the airport, the house out there, just so that we're getting all of council updated on what some suggested directives have been, but getting the full council on board with directing staff to move those initiatives forward. So I would suggest that we bring the request for looking at some other enclosure options back at a future meeting or workshop. November workshop's getting a little tight, so we could either add it on as a regular agenda item at our last meeting in November, or discussion, but that wouldn't provide council the opportunity to give any directives or make any action. So that's my suggestion.
Bring back both topics to future meeting with broader discussion. Okay. Anything else? Okay. No updates from me either. And so that is the end of our planned agenda, and we can move into our closed session. I would move that council move into closed session pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D03 for consideration of labor negotiation strategy, A motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Oppose, and motion carries. We're in closed session. We will come back into open session after that meeting just to adjourn, because we are at the end of our agenda. We're in closed session.